Hello everyone and welcome back to Player One Start. In today's video, we're going to finish up our look at the TurboGrafx 16. In the previous videos I've done on this series, we took a look at the PC Engine in Japan, as well as the process of being converted into the TurboGrafx 16 for the North American video game market. We then took a look at the TurboGrafx 16 itself, then the TurboGrafx CD unit, which was an add-on that allowed the TurboGrafx to take advantage of the expanded storage of the cd-rom format, as well as some additional RAM in the system card. And then we took a look at the Turbo Duo, which not only combined the cd-rom function into one unit with the HuCard reader, but it also included expanded RAM to be able to run more advanced games. If you haven't seen my videos on those, I definitely recommend giving those a look before viewing this video, as it will give a reference for some of the information I'm going to give about the end of the TurboGrafx lifecycle. There should be a link popping up in the corner, but if not, there should be one in the description, as well as at the end of the video, and a playlist on my channel marked The Ultimate TurboGrafx 16 Review Series. This whole review is also part of a 16-bit war I'm doing, where I'm going to have the Sega Genesis, the TurboGrafx 16, face off against the Super Nintendo, and other consoles of the early 90s, to see which one was better. As that series is ongoing, I strongly recommend that you click that subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified when I make future entries in that series. But getting right down to it, I've had a lot of fun getting to know this system. I've only had it for a couple of years, but I had been looking to collect this system for close to 20 years. It's just very rare in my area. And that is the same story I've heard from many people who try to collect for this system. Many of my gamer friends who grew up in the early 90s were like me in the fact that they had never heard of this system when it was released. Very few can recall that, oh yeah, there was another system out there, but I had never played it, but most of the time I get a response that they don't remember this system at all. But after getting to know this system and really enjoying it, I have to wonder what went wrong with the TurboGrafx 16, and why is this system often forgotten? Well, let's take a look. The TurboGrafx 16 was almost doomed to begin with. This can date all the way back to the launch of the TurboGrafx 16. It was released in the test markets of New York City and Los Angeles in late 1989. Disastrously for NEC, this was only 2 weeks after Sega of America had released the 16-bit Sega Genesis. In retrospect, this is an event that really shouldn't have happened. NEC had a huge lead in Japan releasing the PC Engine in 1987. However, a lot of time, some would say too much, was spent on redesigning the console for the North American audience. The Genesis would quickly eclipse the TurboGrafx in terms of sales after its American debut. NEC's decision to pack in Keith Courage and Alpha Zones, which was a Hudson Soft game unknown to Western gamers, proved to be costly as Sega packed in their port of the hit arcade game Altered Beast. NEC's American operations in Chicago were also overhyped about its potential. They quickly produced 750,000 units, which was far and above the actual demand. This was very profitable for Hudson Soft, as NEC paid Hudson Soft royalties for each console produced, whether it sold or not. This was again part of the original agreement between NEC and Hudson Soft as they partnered to make this console in Japan. By 1990, it was clear that the system was performing very poorly, and was being severely edged out of the market by Nintendo and Sega's marketing. On a side note, in Europe, PC Engine imports from Japan drew a cult following, with a number of unauthorized PC Engine imports available, along with NSTC to PAL adapters in the United Kingdom in the late 1980s. In 1989, a British company called Mention manufactured an adapted PAL version of the PC Engine Plus. However, the system was not officially supported by NEC, and after seeing the TurboGrafx 16 suffer in America, NEC decided to cancel their European releases. Units for the European market were already produced, that were essentially US models modified to run on PAL television sets were branded as simply TurboGrafx. NEC ended up selling this stock to distributors. In the United Kingdom, Telegames released the TurboGrafx in 1990 in extremely limited quantities. This model was also released in Spain and Portugal through selected retailers. Back in the US, by 1991, NEC claimed that it had sold its 750,000 TurboGrafx 16 consoles, as well as 500,000 CD-ROM units worldwide. In an effort to relaunch the system in the North American market in mid-1992, NEC and Hudson Soft transferred management of the system in North America to a new joint venture called Turbo Technologies Inc. They also redesigned the console into the Turbo Duo, which was an all-in-one unit that included the CD-ROM drive as well as a HuCard slot built in. However, by that time it was too late. The North American console market continued to be dominated by the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo system. In May of 1994, Turbo Technologies announced that it was dropping support for the Duo, though it would continue to offer repairs for existing units and provide ongoing software releases through independent companies in the US and Canada. The PC Engine would continue to receive support much longer in Japan as it was much more successful. On March 12, 1994, NEC introduced a third upgrade known as the Arcade Card for the PC Engine. It would upgrade the amount of onboard RAM for the CD-ROM system to 2 MB. Cards would be released for both the PC Engine Duo as well as the original PC Engine with the CD-ROM attachment. The first games for this add-on were ports of Neo Geo fighting games such as Fatal Fury 2 and Art of Fighting. Ports of World Heroes 2 and Fatal Fury Special were also later released on this card, along with several original games released under the Arcade CD-ROM 2 standard. By this point, the TurboGrafx and the Turbo Duo were already waning in North America, so no version of this card ever made it overseas. However, it still can be used on a North American console using a HuCard converter. Other games would continue to be released on the Super CD-ROM format, with the final licensed release for the PC Engine being Dead of the Brain Part 1 and 2 on June 3, 1999 on the Super CD-ROM 2 format. In 1994, NEC released a new console, the Japan-only PC-FX. This was a 32-bit system with a tower-like design. It enjoyed a small but steady stream of games until 1998, when NEC finally abandoned the video game industry altogether. NEC had supplied rival Nintendo with the RISC-based CPUs, the V810, the same one used in the PC-FX, for the Virtual Boy, as well as the VR4300 CPU for the Nintendo 64. Both of these consoles, being released in 1995 and 96, were released when NEC was still making their own console. The same is also true with the chip they contributed to the Dreamcast, designing its version of the Power VR2 GPU for the Sega Dreamcast, released in 1998. The console itself faded into obscurity in the late 90s and early 2000s. I myself first learned of the system when reading Stephen L. Kent's The Ultimate History of Video Games. And to me, I always wondered why I had never heard about this system that supposedly competed with two of the biggest consoles of my childhood, the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis. Whenever I would talk with those that actually grew up with this system, I would hear very enthusiastic stories of nostalgia when people would recount this system, with many stating that even though they didn't have a Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis, many of their friends would be intrigued by that system, and it usually left an impact on them because the games were good, but it was on a system they had never heard of before. Then, in 2006, a number of TurboGrafx 16, HuCard, and CD-ROM games, as well as Turbo Duo games were released for Nintendo's Virtual Console download service for the Wii, as well as eventually the Wii U and the 3DS. These would also include several titles that were never released outside of Japan. For many gamers, both old and new, this would be the first time people would play many of these games. And because there were several quality titles and franchises that they never knew were on this system, many people started wondering more about this system. It is at this point in time where I really feel like the TurboGrafx had a renaissance. putting the games on the Virtual Console, as well as some of them making their way to the PlayStation Network on the PlayStation 3 and PSP, as well as an app released in 2010 for the iPhone, it made these games more accessible to a wide audience. With this console and its games not selling well in the United States, it doesn't make the casual gamer want to go out and collect these, as the pricing has always been higher than other systems in the collector's market. But on these platforms, they could easily download them to their systems for a low price and play each game on a system they already have. No other investment required. As more and more gamers started playing these classic titles, several fans started calling for a TurboGrafx 16 mini console. As Nintendo, Sega, and Sony have done with their earlier systems, many wanted a TurboGrafx 16 mini console with HDMI out and classic games built in so that gamers could finally experience this system. In 2019, Konami announced at E3 and at a Tokyo Game Show that year that the TurboGrafx 16 Mini, a dedicated console featuring many built-in games, would be released. However, at this point you may be wondering, where did Konami come in? The relationship between Hudson Soft and Konami can be traced to at least as early as 1985, when Hudson ported Konami's game Puyon to the MSX and Famicom. But the acquisition process of Hudson Soft by Konami would begin in 2001. Hudson Soft was severely hit by the collapse of its main bank. Seeking new financial alternatives, Hudson Soft entered the stock market for the first time in December of 2000, listing on the Nasdaq Japan Exchange. This led to Konami purchasing a stock allocation of 5.6 million shares in August of 2001, becoming the company's largest shareholder. In April 2005, Konami became Hudson's majority shareholder and parent company, owning 53.99% of all Hudson stock. Hudson Soft would continue to publish video games while working closely with Konami, becoming an official subsidiary. In April 2011, Hudson Soft became wholly owned by Konami, and its American division, Hudson Entertainment, was liquidated in the process. On March 1, 2012, Hudson Soft officially ceased to exist following a merger with Konami Digital Entertainment, with its music business being absorbed into the KME Corporation. The merger was voluntary and agreed to by both companies during a board meeting held earlier that year. The main reason for the dissolution of Hudson Soft was the consolidation of the operations of Hudson and Konami into a single company. Despite the demise of Hudson Soft, Konami had plans for products to continue to be developed and offered under the Hudson brand. The Hudson website was even initially retained and maintained by Konami. However, by 2014, Konami had retired the website. The pre-2005 headquarters of Hudson Soft in Sapporo continued to operate as a branch of Konami well after the absorption until it closed in October of 2014. In 2015, Konami sold the Sapporo building that had long been the headquarters of Hudson Soft. NEC still exists as a very large company. As of 2017, it was number 463 on the Fortune 500 list. And though NEC was considered the world's fourth largest PC manufacturer by 1990, its semiconductor business was the world's largest by revenue from 1985 to 1992. But as it declined, NEC spun off its semiconductor business and has largely withdrawn from the manufacturing industry since the beginning of the 21st century. So what does the future hold for the TurboGrafx 16? It looks like that the TurboGrafx 16 is still going strong, as there is a new console coming out from Analog that is called the Analog Duo that is supposed to be able to play TurboGrafx 16, PC Engine, Super Graphics, TurboGrafx 16, and PC Engine cd-rom games, as well as the Super Arcade cd-roms, basically making it the ultimate TurboGrafx console to have. Analog uses FPGA circuitry to be able to make this console hardware backwards compatible with no emulation, and the console should be able to put the image out in full HD through HDMI. This console was announced on October 16th of 2020, however, as of the posting of this video, this console has yet to be released. It is my hope that once this system becomes more readily available to more gamers, I feel like that the console will have a strong future ahead of it, hopefully sparking some interest in homebrew developers and even some small indie developers to be able to create new games for this system. Analog has released dev kits in the past and partnered with developer tools to help make game development a bit easier on their platforms. And though I don't feel that this will replace original hardware by any means, I feel like this is a great way to bring this system and its game library into the future. Definitely better than releasing some sort of minigame console that can only play emulated games and not the entire game library. The only other thing I would like to see accompany this system are fully licensed new production runs of some of the games that are harder to find, as well as ports of PC Engine games being re-released with English translations for the North American market. Thanks to endeavors like these, I feel like the TurboGrafx 16 does have a future ahead of it, and the system is definitely not dead. If you like this video and you'd like to help out with future projects on this channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Also, if you enjoy the content of this channel, please remember to click on this subscribe button. Again, I want to thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.